Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvinavadi Tamastu Ma Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Om, peace, peace, peace. And good evening, and we are back here reading more from the complete works of Swami Ramakrishnananda, one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. And this is his chapter on the Kingmaker Sri Krishna. We just finished the pastoral Sri Krishna, which covered everything from his birth through his childhood and his play with the gopis and so forth. And now he's going into a rather long introductory section about the nature of human beings and the nature of avatars before he gets to the heart of Sri Krishna, the Kingmaker. But we will begin with the paragraph, if you're following along, it's on page 185. Such is the life of the man.
Such is the life of the man of the world. And who is not a man of the world? Everyone thinks that his home is here, and everyone therefore is always unwilling to leave it. Forgetful of the utterly precarious nature of his life, forgetful of the one certain fact of his final departure from here, the man of the world behaves like a madman in thinking that to be his own, which really does not belong to him. The all-deluding idea of I and mine impels him to fight against his brother man for a small scrap of land, for every trifling thing, and sometimes bloodshed and murder are the result. The thought of I and mine is the cause. He does not consider that what he thinks to be his now belonged to someone else before, and is going to belong to someone else hereafter. So how can that be his, which has come to him by accident, and which is to go away from him by accident? Today a man is poor, tomorrow he becomes rich. A few days afterwards, he again becomes poor. Where's the money gone? It came of its own accord to him, left him of its own accord. So how can he rationally think that money to be his, since whatever belongs to him must depend on him, whereas the money is totally independent of him? A man may be learned and vastly qualified, still he may be poor. On the other hand, a man may be nothing better than a dunce, and still he may be a millionaire. Therefore the great Bhishmacharya says, man is slave to money, but money is slave to none, and still he is under the illusion that money belongs to him. It's his property, and he has full right over it. What a delusion.
Yes, interesting observations here. And of course, this idea of I and mine is what is a big problem for our spiritual life, because it's what our ego tends to get attached to. Our ego gets attached to various things in the world, and we tend to identify ourselves with not only our talents, but also our things and possessions, and the way people value their possessions, because they somehow makes them think that they're special if they have a better car than somebody, or a bigger house than somebody, that somehow makes them something. And of course, even this body and mind aren't really ours. They're just our temporary, we're just temporarily inhabiting this body and mind, and we're just temporarily inhabiting a particular house or a place. And as he says, the money comes and goes. It's just kind of fluid. It goes, runs in and runs out. And people could inherit a lot of money and then suddenly lose it all in the stock market. So things come and go. And there's no point in trying to identify yourself with it. It's interesting too if you've had to move a lot in your growing up or in your adult life. If you've had to move from house to house, you learn to become detached from the place where you lived. If you lived in one place for a long time, you might have a stronger attachment to it and feel like that this is your place, but at some point it's not yours anymore. So it's interesting too when you look at incidences of kids that have remembered their past lives and things. They can even have an attachment to a previous house. Well, this isn't my house. I have a house that's over in this other village somewhere. And others are, since they had a death experience and have come back, they have a greater sense of detachment because they realize that everything is temporary, and that who they were and where they were in a previous life is not who they are and where they are at the moment. So it's interesting how different people have these different experiences, even among the rare people that remember their past lives. Some have a great deal of detachment from things, and others still have attachments to the things of their previous incarnations even. Not to mention this one, my goodness. Let's see what this is all leading up to in Swami Ramakrishnananda's mind here.
But this delusion every man inherits from his father, and his father has inherited it from his father, and so on ad infinitum. Hence delusion is the only patrimony we can be proud of. And what a wretched pride it is. To what an abject condition it reduces us. Upon this delusion are based all our social rules and regulations. Nay, all our higher moral ideas too are based on this idea of I and mine. Do unto others as you would that they should do unto you means regard all as yours. It broadens your idea of I and mine, no doubt. It does not save you from the hand of illusion. You've come from the unknown, and to the unknown you are destined to go. You're merely a stranger to this planet, and like a stranger you will have to leave it sooner or later. This is the bare truth, devoid of all force, all false ornamentation. Has a stranger any right to claim as his own the property that belongs to his host? So you have no right to call anything yours here. If you want to be saved from the hand of illusion.
It reminds me that, especially back in the East Coast, where some families trace their ancestry way back to when people first immigrated from Europe to the United States, and people became identified as old money. They belonged to the old established families, and there was even some bit of prejudice against people that thought they were part of that social circle because they were rich, but they were the new rich. They weren't the old money. And so all of these strange ideas that our ego gets attached to can be quite amusing sometimes when you can look at it with some detachment. This idea too of belonging to a family that can trace its ancestry back a long ways and so forth. All these things are just really adding illusion to illusion and delusion to delusion, and bolstering up our ego, trying to find our roots and our ancestry and so forth. That can be a fun and interesting pastime, but it's nothing to get attached to. All right, let's continue.
This is what the wise advise us to do. but is very easy to advise and most difficult to perform. In this case, it is altogether beyond the power of a man to carry it out practically. We cannot imagine a triangular circle, so we cannot imagine a world without the idea of I and mine, which is the only pivot upon which the eternal wheel is revolving. From the lowest to the highest, all men are imbued with this one idea. Hence a man can never save a man from the hand of illusion.
So this idea that it's the ego that's our main obstacle to spiritual life, and this idea of I and mine is one of the strongest ego attachments that we can have. But we're going to have to find a way out. So let's see what the way is to salvation here.
Is there no salvation? Is man always destined to be a plaything of this unconquerable demoness, the illusion, this Maya? This history of the world sometimes presents us with the lives of a few rare individuals who are altogether of different type from the ordinary men of the world. They never find any satisfaction from the teachings of human teachers. Human aspirations and ideals do not satisfy them. Lust and gold have no charm over them. Nature, with all her loveliness, can never fascinate them. The idea of I and mine has no place in them. They do not condescend to travel through the paths taken up by the multitude of men who surround them. An altogether unthought of and new path each one of them must have to prepare for himself and for those who will be willing to follow him to satisfy his mental craving. For no earthly food can ever satisfy his hunger. He finds fault with the existing system of religion and education. He puts down the vanity of the pedants, wants to learn the course of society, and if he takes it into his head, sometime wants to rebuild it. People look at him wonderingly and ask, well, what sort of man this must be? He claims no human teacher. Whence has he learned all these queer ways? He must have learned them from some unknown teacher. Or it may be he has learnt them from himself. He is his own teacher. But what a tremendous power he has, to set at naught the combined power of the whole human race, ranged against him to put down his new theories and principles. How can they classify him as one of them? He must require some higher, nobler, and better stuff to be formed as a man.
So he's introducing this idea that there are some special people with special insights into the nature of the world and the ability to become detached from it, who might seem as strange to some people, but turn out to be incarnations of God with special powers and special teachings. And really they update the current teachings. All of the incarnations really did that. They might have seemed to have thrown other things out, but almost all of them, I mean, Christ said he came to fulfill, not to destroy. Buddha was perhaps a little different, but basically his philosophy comes right out of Hinduism. And all these incarnations that we find in Hinduism really just build upon what was already there, reinterpret some things, introduce a few new things, and explain things in a new and updated light. But Hinduism doesn't tend to throw things out. It tends to simply reinterpret and incorporate. So let's continue.
You want to take a turn?
All right. Thus, naturally, all men regard him as something superhuman or divine, and of their own accord they invest him with the title of the Incarnation of God. As his training and education have not proceeded from the school of the senses, they must have flowed from some supersensuous region, and hence, naturally, he must have many supersensuous experiences, which to us may appear as miraculous, and hence incredible, still which we cannot rationally deny, seeing that he owes not a little to any of our books, scientific or religious, but that he brings altogether new ideas and principles for our acceptance. The man who is fondly imagining that he is only 3.5 cubits in length, and who never wants to regard himself as anything higher than that, lest by so doing he may be unmindful of the charming deity which presides over his life, his fair partner, whom he regards as his better half, such a man may deny, like a frog in the well, that there can be anything higher and nobler than what his 5 senses present to him. He may quote the philosophy of Kant to support his pet views, which are absolutely limited within the 4 corners of the earth. But no sane man, amenable to reasoning, can ever deny the existence of many more worlds than what he is destined to see with his 5 senses, only for a short period of time. If the real man is eternally blissful and omniscient, as we have seen previously, then the opinions of the apparent man of 3.5 cubits in length may be safely dispensed with, although the modern civilized man, standing upon the highest rung of the ladder of our dying century, may encourage his extremely narrow and dogmatic skeptic ideas. So, of course, we all are raised in a particular environment that has a particular outlook on life, and that gives us a particular paradigm that we tend to see everything in. And he seems to be referring to materialistic people here, where that judge everything through their 5 senses. But in actuality, the incarnations don't disregard the previous scriptures. They all incorporate the Vedic teachings. In fact, the Bhagavad Gita is said to be the greatest summary of the teaching from the Vedas. So I certainly wouldn't say that he's developing anything completely new, but he certainly gave a brilliant summary of all the ideas and made them much clearer. But anyway, he seems to be talking more about the people he was running into in his circles, where they might be quoting Western philosophers and materialist viewpoints, and wondering how there could be anything beyond our ordinary 5 senses. But of course, anyone who has had any kind of mystical experience or has come into contact with somebody who has that spiritual vibe about them, which you can tell that there's something distinctly different about them, you know that there is something beyond these 5 senses. And almost anybody who is willing to admit it has had some experience that has been beyond the 5 senses. The trouble is, if you have a materialistic outlook, you're not going to admit it. You're going to say that you really didn't have that experience, or that it was something you didn't understand, something you misunderstood, and so you just disregard it. This is very typical of people in a particular mindset. They simply can't understand anything that's beyond their paradigm, and so if it's not in their paradigm, somehow they made a mistake, or they just haven't been able to figure out a way to explain it yet, but at some point they'll be able to explain it. So we tend to live within our paradigms, and it's very difficult to get ourselves out of those paradigms. But if somebody is blessed with coming into contact with someone like Sri Ramakrishna or Sri Sarada Devi or one of the direct disciples, then they would know immediately, if they're open to it, that there was definitely something beyond the experience of the five senses. All right, we have another, oh my goodness, this is another one of these infinite paragraphs. So if I come to an interesting point, I might interrupt you.
The number of such divine beings who have graced this earth of ours from time immemorial is so few that they may be counted on our fingers. They always come to give and tell us something new, and they leave the earth, increasing her intellectual and spiritual wealth 1,000-fold more than when it was previous to their advent. In remote times, Buddha came to astound the ruling brahmanas who were eating and distributing the chaff of religion, altogether forgetting the sweet and life-giving kernel within, with its redoubtable force of argument based upon the adamantine rock of pure reasoning, and also succeeded in converting to his views many of them who were amenable to reason. Later on, Jesus came upon the Pharisees and Sadducees who were solely concerned with the form and not with the spirit of religion. He carried the good message of love divine to all people of all ages, and himself died as a sacrifice to his cause. Then Shankara came to denounce the horrible and abnormal practices of the abjectly downfallen representatives of the once glorious Buddhism, and succeeded in bringing about a better state of society by reinstating the religion eternal, accepting Lord Buddha as one of the incarnations of God. Later on, Ramanuja came to rectify the absurd customs and spiritless practices of the so-called followers of Shankara, and gave to the people a new form of religion which they could better appreciate and grasp. The great Madhvacharya followed in his wake to make religion more concrete and easily appreciable and accessible to all classes of people.
Yeah, in each case we have a situation where religion tended to get downgraded, where the least important aspects of the religion tended to end up getting emphasized, and the essence of them tended to get ignored, or tended to get extreme to the point that didn't relate to enough people. Now, of course, Sri Ramakrishna's advent gave us somebody who was so broad that it incorporates all of the previous schools without saying that any of them were wrong, that they're all perfectly good traditions. And so we have the opportunity to appreciate and choose the path that's the best for us. All right, let's finish this paragraph.
Later on came Sri Gauranga with his sweet religion of love, and gave us the key to unlock the most beautiful and sublime life of Sri Krishna, representing all sides of human nature, coupled with the superhuman. This grandly divine personage, Sri Krishna, flourished in remote antiquity many hundreds of years previous to the advent of Lord Buddha, and blessed the Mother Earth with a religion which in its broad universality far surpasses all other religions, and which is a true representation of the religion eternal, intended for all men at all times. But for Sri Gauranga, the life of this divine being would remain a sealed thing to many who find great difficulty in reconciling his apparently contradictory characters. Sri Gauranga's life was a reproduction of some of the grandest phases of the immutable life, the most glorious of all those divine personages who have blessed this fortunate planet of ours.
Of course, Sri Gauranga, that's Sri Chaitanya. He started out as a very scholarly pundit, which sort of exemplifies the weakness of the Shankara school. The Shankara school tended to become very erudite and very scholarly and prone to a lot of arguments and debates. It's a wonderful philosophy. If you take the assumptions, you can reason things very nicely, but that doesn't mean it's the only philosophy. And of course, Vivekananda pointed out that all of these schools of philosophy, the Advaita, the Vishishta and Dvaita, can all be argued from the scriptures. And you have to torture the text and make it look like only one of them can be argued from the Vedas. So they're all can be based quite nicely on the Vedas. And Sri Ramakrishna, of course, recognized that. All right, so let's. The next paragraph isn't quite so big.
From what has already been said, it is clear that these divine personages must experience many supernatural phenomena and must possess much supernatural knowledge and power, their minds being always directed beyond the senses, beyond all names and forms. So not limited by their bodies and thus not confined by time and space, they are such to be all-permeating in all times, and hence eternally omniscient. Their lives have no beginning and no end, because they never identify themselves with their bodies, in which they feel they are dwelling for a time. Therefore, since they are eternal, they are still living.
Yes, we tend to identify them with a particular body, mind, and name and form, and a particular life, but in essence, they are eternal and they are ever existence. And that, of course, the direct disciples and Sri Sarada Devi would tell us that too about Sri Ramakrishna, that he's still a living presence, and he's a living presence in each one of our hearts and each one of our temples. And that's why, of course, we do daily worship, because that emphasizes that spiritual presence in the form of Sri Ramakrishna and the other personages which we have on the shrine. They're all living presences. Anytime you're doing worship to a particular deity, you're recognizing that there's a living presence to that particular spiritual energy. All right, let's continue.
The question may come, is not every man similarly eternal? And what is the speciality of these beings? The only speciality is that they know they are eternal, whereas the man of the world does not know it, although he is really so. And the difference is vast. One is wise, the other is ignorant. One is light, the other is darkness. And hence one must be the leader or guide, and the other must be led or guided, as the one has eyes and the other is blind.
Yes, so this is the specialty of the incarnation, is that they have always known that they are one with Brahman, and that they're inhabiting a body and the mind. And they might temporarily kind of keep that under wraps, you could say, in order to live out the divine play, but they can always recapture that. Whereas even a person who has had spiritual experiences will be more apt to have trouble re-experiencing that particular feeling and knowledge that they are one with the divine. But people that have had near-death experiences or past life experiences will have a slightly different perspective on things. They'll have a greater detachment. Usually people that have come back from those experiences have a more detached experience of life and realize that this life is not the be-all and end-all, and that there is life beyond it. All right, let's continue.
It is only natural for a man of the world, therefore, to commit all sorts of blunders. If he is vain enough to believe in his own deplorably limited mind, if he does not allow himself to be led by one or the other of these divine incarnations, woe is sure to befall him in the meandering paths of this world of mystery, where nature like a siren deceives all passers-by and leads them to destruction at last.
Going back to the first ideas that he was presenting about the I and mind, it's really the best to just think of yourself as a caretaker wherever you happen to find yourself. You're just a caretaker. And so you have a job to do. You're going to take care of whatever it is you're supposed to be the caretaker of. Might be property, it might be wealth, it might be a family. But whatever it is, you're just the temporary caretaker, just like a teacher. The teacher has a classroom of students that they're responsible for. And at the end of the year, they're not responsible for them anymore. Somebody else is going to be responsible for them the next year. Or like a healthcare worker that comes in and has a particular client, and they're in charge of that client. They're supposed to be taking care of that client, but it's just a temporary job. Or a nanny, a housekeeper, or someone of that nature. They have a job to do, and they're the caretakers. So this is the kind of attitude that we should have, and to think of things as really belonging to the Lord gives you a way of spiritualizing whatever it is you're taking care of. All right.
The lives of all those glorious individuals whom the world of its own accord has had to recognize as nothing less than divine incarnations always present to every reader a series of incidents which are human, strangely interwoven with what is superhuman. And thoughtless people who always boast of the superior character of their intellect hold that all the superhuman incidents and later inventions of the followers of those great men, for according to them, nothing superhuman can ever exist. Which what we have been saying all along, does not this dogmatic assertion on their part sound like that of the frog in the well, which held that there could be nothing bigger than his well? Really, such people are to be pitied. They do not want to harbor any idea which is more than human, and therefore they do not want to see in these God-men anything more than model men who have lived, labored, suffered, and enjoyed as all people do, and who preach nothing but how to live in this world happily, how to get the greatest amount of good here with the least amount of labor, forgetting all the while the lives of these God-men were the standing protests against the lives lived by men surrounding them, that they drew none of their inspiration from their environments, but that it came from within themselves, or from some manifested power to find with all those social and religious practices that were in vogue around them. Those hasty people forgot that these incarnations were born to guide and not be guided, and hence their experiences must be of a far superior nature to those of others, to whom many of their actions must appear, therefore, to be more than human or miraculous. You want to take it out?
Okay. Yeah, and of course this is an interesting phenomenon with these ancient stories, and these are of course very ancient stories, and we know how stories can get elaborated through the times, and in fact it doesn't even take very long for stories to get elaborated. The stories can get elaborated within a few days, and certainly when you're talking about a few thousand years, stories can get elaborated quite a bit. But there is some truth behind these stories. There's a great truth behind these stories, and the fact that they might seem fantastic to us now simply means that perhaps they've been elaborated to the point where they now seem fantastic, but there was probably something, there was a kernel of miraculousness there to begin with, or it wouldn't have been exaggerated even to the point that it is. And we find out more and more things that with archaeology these days, digging into the past, where we find things that we didn't understand before. We're finding that we may have to rewrite some of the history of the human race, because we're finding out more and more things. We're finding out more things in astronomy, and we may have to rewrite our textbooks in astronomy. So the things we think we know, we may not be so sure about. But what we can be sure about is that the life of someone like Sri Krishna had such an enormous impact over the centuries that there certainly was something miraculous about it. Whether all the details were exactly as they come down to us is not known, but I don't think that really matters. The point is the clarity of his teachings is what really matters, and how they have impacted people and can impact people now is really the important thing. So I'll wrap up this paragraph here. The attempts of those who want to paint such men as nothing better than ordinary men are as good as to paint the sun without his glory, to describe beauty without a form, to enjoy a piece of music without melody, to relish a dish without taste. As light is inseparably connected with the sun, so the superhuman is inseparably connected with the human in them. Thus, if we totally disbelieve in the miraculous portion of their lives, we cannot do so without raising suspicion in the minds of all good and unbiased reasoners regarding our sanity. It should be our duty, therefore, to present the lives of these good men as we find them depicted in our books, instead of omitting, altering, and twisting and torturing the text to suit our limited mental capacities. With this preface, let us proceed to our subject and really benefit ourselves by studying the divine character of Bhagavan Sri Krishna, whose incarnation was solely for the material and spiritual welfare of the earth. All right, you want to take a little?
The king in his palace was restless after sending Akrura to bring Rama and Krishna from Vrindavan. He was expecting them every moment with feverish excitement. The townspeople, on the other hand, were very happy over the coming festival. They had attired themselves in gala dresses and had formed themselves into little groups, drowning their merry talk in incessant floods of laughter. The whole city of Mathura was very gay, expecting to receive in its bosom ere long the two brightest gems on earth. The stories of the unprecedented personal beauty and prowess of the two brothers had long ago been carried by the breeze of rumor in all directions. Hence Rama and Krishna were not unknown to the citizens of Mathura, who of their own accord were decorating their houses and streets to give them a suitable reception, and were every moment expecting their much-longed for arrival. Kamsa also was restless for them. But how different was the anxiety in the heart of the king from that in the hearts of his subjects.
Yes, you wonder why they would even venture into the area where Kamsa would be there. But obviously they had a divine drama to fulfill, and so this was part of the divine drama, and it was the way it had to be. Whereas most of us would have simply avoided going anywhere near King Kamsa. Krishna knew that he was destined to have to be the one to slay him because he was an evil king, and so this whole drama is being set up here. All right.
One was ordering the decoration of the arena, selecting the biggest and maddest of elephants, the most bloodthirsty, ferocious, and powerful of wrestlers to meet and ruin the two brothers, with the secret understanding that the latter should never be allowed to escape alive. While the citizens, on the other hand, were beautifying their city anxious to meet them out of pure love and reverence towards them. One was restless with pain, while the others were restless with expectant pleasure. These two opposite feelings were not hidden from the all-seeing minds of the two brothers, and they were ready for the occasion.
Akura also revealed to them the full purpose of the demoniacal monarch, for although he was confidential courtier of Kamsa, still he was a great lover of Sri Krishna, whose glory was not hidden from him. When he got down into the Yamuna to take a bath after the two brothers had finished theirs and were comfortably seated upon the chariot, Akura, who had been looking at their beautiful and innocent forms and inwardly admiring them, also saw them in the river when he took his first plunge in it, and not being able to make out how within the twinkling of an eye the two could leave their seats in the chariot and come into the river. He immediately raised his head from the water and directed his eyes towards the chariot, only to see in great wonder that they were sitting there as before. He thought it might be an optical delusion, and with totally unprejudiced mind, he took a second plunge. But the matter was not mended in any way, and he saw before him the two brothers smiling at him in the waters. He again raised up his head and from the water and looked toward the chariot, only to see them sitting in the same posture as before. He made a third experiment, and the result was the same. A fourth, a fifth, a sixth experiment, and many more experiments afterwards only brought about the same result. Then he naturally concluded that they must be the incarnations of that eternally glorious being who permeates fire, water, and all the universe. And at this thought his heart melted into an intense reverence towards them, and spontaneously he sang their glories in this way: I bow down to thee, O thou, the abode of all beings, who art the cause of even the cause of the universe, who art the first being, the eternal one, and from the lotus of whose navel Brahma, the creator of the universe, has taken his birth. So this is one of those miraculous things where the incarnation can appear in more than one place because they are eternal. They're not confined to their body and their mind. They are eternal, and they can appear in more than one place at a time. All right, let's see how we doing. We got time for maybe one paragraph, and then we'll call it an evening.
Sir Akura knew them to be the one infinite spirit, disguised in human forms, most attractive that ever were born of women, only to draw the minds of all men and women of the world, who are always mad after the ever-shifting and ephemeral beauties of nature, toward themselves. Infinite we are all indeed, but this idea of ourselves has been totally sealed from our view by the nameless power of ignorance, which never allows us to go beyond names and forms, and which was totally driven out and discarded by the glorious light of eternal knowledge in Rama and Krishna. Although fire is latent in all firewood, mere fuel can never save us from the effect of cold, says Bhagavan Sri Krishna. But only that fire which is patent can save us from cold and can be of service to us in sundry other ways. Rama and Krishna had their fire patent in them, hence they could guide all people safely through the dark and meandering paths of the world. Not being confined to their bodies, they had the power of illumining the minds of all people. Akura's mind was illumined by them, and that was the reason why he could see in all those young men the all-ruling spirit of the universe. Could they not similarly illumine the mind of the demonic king Kamsa? Was there no other way to save the world from his tyranny than by killing him? Were they not partial to Akura in this way? We cannot say so. The sun shines equally upon all, says Sri Krishna. He does not stint his rays towards a man because he is wicked. He does not pour forth all his glory upon the head of a man because he is saintly. He shines equally upon the flour and the filth, upon the transparent as well as the opaque. The transparent things alone can imbibe and reflect his glory, whereas the opaque ones have no power in them to be illumined. As on this account we cannot say the sun to be partial, for we have no reason to lay that blame at the door of Rama and Krishna.
Itself, this is a quite elaborate introduction to this particular episode in Sri Krishna's life. We have to remember that when Swami Vivekananda came to the West, he really kept all the miraculous ideas of Sri Ramakrishna hidden. He really didn't talk about that. He didn't want to attract people who were mystery mongers, you could say. And so he talked straight philosophy and straight spiritual practices. But when you read the lives of Sri Ramakrishna and the life of Sri Sarada Devi, you find all sorts of miraculous events that happened that, very much like some of these events we read about Sri Krishna, seem beyond obviously the normal experiences that we have, beyond things that we would experience with our senses. Times when Sri Ramakrishna would appear as one of the deities, or Sri Sarada Devi would appear to somebody as one of the deities. And so we can understand that these things probably did happen to some extent, and were part of the actual life of this incredible person of Sri Krishna. But so long ago that there have probably been a few elaborations as well. So as I said before, those elaborations really are not, don't detract from the importance of his teachings. All right, we'll continue this dramatic story of Sri Krishna, the Kingmaker, when we meet again next week.
It won't be next week.
Won't be next week. Oh, that's right. Next week is Thanksgiving, and we take the day after Thanksgiving off, so it will be 2 weeks before you'll be able to find out what happens. Stay tuned in 2 weeks. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om peace, peace, peace. Seems like we get more people when we're in the library. Maybe it's just because the library is